Hello, welcome to another video. So a while ago I promised that I would make a video about Manchester versus London. Now this is a controversial topic and one that will never come to an end, but this is my 2 cents worth, and I hope that you find it useful, especially if you're planning on moving to Manchester, because that's where I'm living right now, and I just want to provide some context as someone who has lived in both cities, Manchester as well as London. Just a bit of background: I moved to Manchester just over 2 years ago. Before that, I had lived in London for quite a couple of years, so I have experience in both of the cities, and I think I can make a fair comparison between the two. Now, I'm going to break it down into a couple of pillars, and I'll talk you through each of them as I go through them. One is the cost of living. So I'm not going to provide some numbers, because I think when it comes to numbers and kind of like the budget and how much exactly it costs, it's down to person by person, so I can't really speak to the numbers of how much it would cost. But what I will say is that on average, what the stats say is London is about 45% more expensive than Manchester. Now I think that this stat is probably going to change soon, because Manchester is getting quite expensive. I think Manchester is a developing city and there are a lot of new buildings and skyscrapers coming up. There's an influx of people that are coming into the city, and so it's causing a lot of demand, especially when it comes to the most expensive thing, which is accommodation. So although London is more expensive than Manchester, Manchester is one to look out for when it comes to rental. But yeah, when we compare it like to like, I think definitely Manchester is less expensive than London when it comes to rental. It also has, I think, a lot more option when it comes to the type of accommodation that you can live in. In both cities, there is the sharing option, so you can live with like 2 people or 3 people, or even like a house share. Housing in Manchester just feels a bit better space wise, and also commute wise, how far you are from the transport system and transport links, etc. And when you split the rental, it gets a lot less expensive, just because council tax and the general bills are less expensive. So I think definitely if you're just looking at it rent base, Manchester takes the price on cost of living. You need to also take into consideration the salaries. Manchester salaries are northern salaries, and they're much less than London. So you'd need to compare kind of in your specific situation which one works a bit better. London salaries are much higher because the cost of living is much higher. I definitely think that if you are managing your expenses properly and you're kind of like living according to your means, you'd probably end up with a bit more value for money when you're living in Manchester. This might be biased, but yeah, I just think because of the pace of life in London and how far things are apart from each other and the cost of transport, etc., it just, life can get really expensive really quickly, versus in Manchester where you can manage your expenses a lot better and you can save by walking to places, by chilling at a park instead of going out. Whereas yeah, in London I feel as though life needs a lot more money, basically. The second thing I'll compare is the transport links. So this one, I'm gonna just say up front, London probably takes the price when it comes to transport links. Manchester has trams, buses and trains, but the only downside of it is that sometimes they all just break down at once. The trams are really good, like in general, but if there's any type of congestion or there is kind of a breakdown in the lines, everything just comes to a standstill and it's not ideal. The buses get really slow, especially on like super rainy days, and you just can't put your life dependency, you can't depend on like a bus. You can't put all your trust in a bus, basically, is what I'm saying, because sometimes the schedule changes and no one says anything, and then you just sat there waiting for a bus to come that never really does, or it comes an hour later. So that's the downside of the transport system. And then the trains are there, but they're not super close to everywhere, so it just depends where you live. If you live by a train line, super great, but if you don't, then the train is not really convenient for you. Versus in London, London transport system is a breeze compared to the north in general, and there are a lot of trains and a lot of buses that are available. There's the night bus, which runs like across different boroughs throughout the night, which is really ideal, because if you're stuck in the city or you want to get somewhere at night, it's really convenient. And also the bus is quite cheap compared to the trains. Again, the trains are very regular and frequent. The links to the trains work pretty smoothly. People who live in London right now, you can let me know if I'm lying, but I think just based on like living in London a while ago and also just visiting friends in London, I think the transport system is quite solid, to be honest. The one thing I will say about the London transport system is that because London is a much bigger city, it is quite expensive, so the costs build up quite a lot, and you can find yourself just spending an exorbitant amount on one day just because you went on different links and at different times, and that part is not ideal. That pricing component in comparison to Manchester is quite affordable when it comes to transport. So you can buy a ticket on the tram, which if you buy like a monthly pass or a weekly pass, reduces the cost quite significantly. I think right now a single trip between two zones is about £2.80. Because the city is much smaller, the commute is a lot less expensive than it would be in London. Next is the quality of life. So a lot of different things make up the quality of life for different people. If you are still young and you are a sociable person and you like going out, you like exploring, or even if you're an introvert that just likes being in a big city that has a lot of things to explore, London is probably the place for you to live. And you want to do that while you're young and while you are making the best of your youthful years. As you grow up, things change and you have different priorities, and I think that Manchester becomes a better fit just because, one, again, as already mentioned, the cost of living is a lot lower in comparison, but two, also because of the type of lifestyle. Manchester is very community oriented. It is a very culturally dense city. There are a lot of things to do, especially if you have a family. There's museums, there are theaters, and not to say that those things aren't in London, but I think Manchester offers kind of like a very holistic and community-based surrounding. And because people are raising families in Manchester, a lot of people are raising families and kind of are in their years of building families, it's more likely that you'll find people who are more like you and who are more walking the same path in life in Manchester, and you'll be able to build a community a lot easier. So I would say that when it comes to the quality of life, it definitely is dependent on the type of person that you are. If we think about the other aspects of quality of life, so we've spoken about community, diversity is one that's really big, especially if you're not from the UK in general. Both cities are very diverse. I'd say London is a lot more diverse than Manchester. There's different communities at different places, and you'll find your people or the people that you feel most comfortable being around. So I think that both cities have, like, it's hard to measure up, so there's not really a winner or anything like that. When it comes to amenities and things like schools and access to amenities within the city, I think both cities have a lot to offer. London has, because it's bigger, has like a broader range of schools, for instance, and things to do, and has a heap of things to do. It's like a whole tourist attraction and you can look it up. But in terms of actually living in the city, again, it depends on the type of person that you are. If you are a lot more outgoing and you want to experience the social life of things, I would definitely say opt for London. If you are more on kind of like the cultural and like very culturally dense cities, Manchester is the city to opt for. The other nice thing about Manchester is that it's quite close to the other northern cities, so you can just pop into Liverpool, which is also quite culturally dense. And when I talk about culturally dense, I just mean like the things that people do, museums and pubs and coffee shops and music scene, that type of thing. So yeah, I think that Manchester definitely has a lot to offer when it comes to that. Moving on to the weather. So as I've mentioned in a lot of my videos, and you would already know, Manchester is a rainy city. It always rains all the time, although apparently it's not like the wettest city in the UK. Apparently there's a lot more cities that rain, but I would say for sure when I moved to Manchester I felt the change, because it just rains like all the time. There's no day where you can just be like, oh, it was a dry day. No, it rains all the time. Compared to London, I think it is a lot colder and rainier. So if you want a bit of a drier city, although both cities are a bit grey, to be honest, in winter, so it wouldn't make too much of a difference, but I would definitely say if you are looking for a less wet city or less rainy city and less cold, London is your best bet compared to Manchester, if those are the two comparisons that you're making. Finally, wrapping it up, when it comes to entertainment and things to do, again, both cities have a lot to offer. I would say that it depends what kind of person you are. So if you're looking at London, London has a whole heap of things, and you can see museums, you can see theaters, and some world-renowned places to go. London has beautiful parks that honestly are like world-class, stunning nature spots, etc. So yeah, a lot of things to offer from the London side. On the Manchester side, I think what works well in Manchester's advantage is the culture around Manchester. So the football culture is a big pro, if you're a football fan, that is. There's a lot of museums again to see. There's not a lot of parks, so when it comes to that we are kind of falling short. But what I will say is there are a lot of surrounding areas that you can visit. So because it's in the north, it's about like an hour away from Leeds and that side of the north, York, etc., and all of the kind of like the outskirts or the countryside, and you can have access to that. You can go to Lake District and explore that part of life, and it's within reach, so you don't even need to have a car in some of the places. You can just jump on a train and be there within an hour or so. So Manchester has a lot to offer when it comes to that, and just kind of like the things to do around the city. I hope you found this video useful. If you like this type of content, let me know and I will make more of it. And if you're new to this channel, hello. We do life in Manchester on this channel. We also talk about fitness and health and all things of the like. So do subscribe and like this video, and make sure to watch the other videos that I've made. I have recently recorded a video just talking about the things to look out for when you are moving to Manchester. So do look out for that. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.